Good morning, everyone. We are up to Parak Daled Mishna Yud. Ubezai, and in the following case, Rebbe Lezer Mekel Rebbe Shua Machmer. The sage Rebbe Lezer will be lenient, Rebbe Shua will be stringent. As the previous Mishnah was the opposite way around, Rebbe Lezer was the one who was stringent, Rebbe Shua was the one that was strict. Now, as we go through this next case, it's going to sound very similar to the case before. And the point of this Mishnah is to say that although they're similar, we have it different than before, that here we're going to have Lezer being lenient and Rishua is going to be strict. So just to quickly review, we had a case where you had a mixture of black figs and white figs, and let's say a white fig fell in. Rabbi Yeshua said the black figs, and the Rishua was one fig of Truma that fell into the 100 of 50 and 50 of black and white figs that were chulin. Rabbi Yeshua said that the black and white figs can combine together to nullify the Truma fig, even though if we're talking about a white fig fell in, the black figs, there's no question about them. They're unquestionably permissible. Nonetheless, Rabbi Yeshua still says, although it's distinguishable what is permissible, they can still combine together to nullify. The reason for Rabbi Yeshua's opinion was because they could be, if they'd be pressed together, they would become indistinguishable from whether it's white or black. And therefore, according to Rabbi Yeshua, they can combine, even though you haven't pressed them together and they're undistinguishable, they can still combine to nullify the one fig of Truma. Rabbi Lezer said, no, being that's distinguishable, being that we know which one should be permissible, or we know one of them is permissible, meaning depending on the case, but keeping it simple, in the case where a white fig fell in, we know the black figs are going to be permissible, and therefore the black figs cannot combine with the other white figs of chulin to nullify the Truma fig. So that was Rabbi Yeshua was being lenient. He was allowing the nullification. Rabbi Lezer was being machmir, stringent, because he wasn't allowing the nullification. Now we're going to have a case where we find the opposite. In the fact that now Rabbi Lezer is going to be the one who follows the lenient opinion. Rabbi Yeshua is the one who has the stricter opinion. So a case like this: B'dairis litra ketzias apiakad. One presses a litra of dried figs in the mouth of a jug. Okay, so the way figs were processed they were left to dry out in the field. After that, they were cut to remove their stems. And after that, they were pressed into an eagle, into a round mold. And it came out like a cake or like a block of round cheese. And then what they used to do was, these igula vela round cakes were then taken to the market where pieces of literal weight were separated from the cake with a fork and individually sold. That's how they were sold. You'd break off, you'd separate from this cake of figs a litra, which is a weight, a litra of figs, and that's how it was sold, and that's how they were sold separately. Now, in our case, the Mishnah says the b'dairis litra, he took this amount, this litra of figs, and he pressed it into the mouth of a jug. So you had a jug that was filled with figs, chulin figs. And there are figs that are at the mouth of the jug, and there are figs that are at the bottom of the jug. And it seems, or it's pretty clear, that those figs at the mouth of the jug and the figs at the bottom of the jug were separate. You knew which ones were in the mouth, which ones were, it's not like just one full thing. It seems you were able to really separate between the two, or at least at some point you were able to distinguish the two. But what happened here is that the litra of figs that he pressed into the mouth, they were truma. And he pressed it into the mouth of one of those jugs. So now, and as the Mishnah then says, the Eino Yodea Ezohi, he doesn't know which jug he did it into. He just kind of wasn't looking, and he just pushed it. My understanding is there already were figs at the mouth of the jug, but he was able to still push in some more. And when he pushed it in, he wasn't paying attention to which jug he was doing it into. And now he doesn't know which jug has the truma figs pressed into the mouth of which jug are the truma figs pressed into the mouth of that jug. Doesn't know which jug it is. So basically, he's got a jug of the other jugs that he has. The other jugs he has, he's got figs at the mouth. He's got figs at the bottom. They're chulin. What are the jugs? At the mouth, along with the figs that are already there, he now has these truma figs. plus the figs on the bottom. Doesn't know which one. So what we're going to see is the following, and that is that if this person were to have, okay, if this person had 100 jugs of dates, had 100 jugs of them, and now it comes out that in one of the mouths of the jugs, truma got pressed in together with ones that are already there. Now, if you have 100 jugs, each one of them have chulin jugs at the top, and now you push in some more truma jugs, truma figs, at the mouth. So what we have here is we have 100 mouths, 100 top, we're calling mouths of these jugs that are chulin figs. One of them has some truma figs in it, but we really have 100 against that one. And even though they're not all physically mixed together, the fact that the question involves the mouth of all these jugs, we don't know which mouth of which jug's mouth has the truma figs, and no one speaks this out, but perhaps because they're touching each other, maybe that also helps. But we can consider them a mixture. You kind of didn't understand exactly if they're not touching each other, how would they be a mixture? All these 100 jugs together. I didn't see anybody explain that. But either because, again, they're all together and the question revolves around all of them. Maybe they're touching and that makes it better. But the point is, if you've got these 100 jugs or 100 jugs here, and you have 100 jug mouths of chulin figs, and now in one of them they added truma figs, well, you have 100 against one. You've got enough that you need to nullify. You've got 100 chulin figs in the mouth of 100 jugs. One of them now has truma figs also. Have 100 against one, you're fine. Remove it. You nullify it, and you got to give the kohen the amount of litra of figs to make sure it doesn't lose out on his truma. But that's not the case here. You didn't have 100 figs. You didn't have 100 barrels with figs at its mouth. That's not the case here. And therefore, the case is, so now how do we move on? How do we go further? What do we do now? So Rebbe Lezer says, Royan Oysan Ki'ilu Hein Prudais. We look at the figs at the mouth of the jugs as if they have become separated and therefore mixing with the bottom ones. And the bottom ones are now able to bring up to allow us to eat the top ones. So what's happening, according to Rebbe Lezer, is that although I really do have a separation, I know which ones are permissible, which ones aren't permissible, or at least I know which ones are, I really do know which ones are permissible. Nonetheless, according to Belezer, even though the ones at the top are separated from the ones at the bottom, I look at it as if they've basically fallen to the bottom and they're all mixed together. And if they're all mixed together, right, so now all the top ones and bottom ones are mixed together, and now, so to speak, my doubt involves everything that are in these jugs. If at the end of the day, I know that I have 100 litra of chulin figs against the 1 litra of truma figs, batal, it's nullified. That's what Liza says you can do. If I can now look at all of them coming together, I can look at them all mixing together. Now, don't forget, I have the ones in the bottom that I know are permissible. I have the ones at the top that are mixed with the truma. I don't know which one it is, okay? But Rebbe Lezer is saying that I can combine the two. I can look at it as if the top and the bottom, the permissible and not permit, and the questionable, come together. And I don't just look at each barrel. I look at all the barrels together. And if in all the barrels together, I can come up with a total of 100 litra of chulin against the 1 litra of truma, it's batal. That's what Belezer says. Now, the Avram brings down that the commentaries speak out that according to Belezer allows this to happen. He's lenient here because of the fact that when we're talking about truma and meiser of figs, we will learn that according to the Torah, truma and meiser only have to be taken from three types of produce, either wheat, grapes, and olives. That's the Torah obligation. Everything else is rabbinic. So since we're dealing here with a rabbinic obligation, a rabbinic law of truma, we can be lenient. The problem is still, though, right, that we talked about figs in the previous Mishnah also. The white black figs were also figs. The truma was only midrabanan. And nonetheless, Rebbe Eliezer there was still stringent. And he said, no, you can't go ahead and mix the permissible with the questionable to be able to mevatel the truma. So that's the question we're going to have to get back to. But this is what Rebbe Eliezer is saying right now at this point in this case. Rabbi Shua Omer, Rabbi Shua says, Lo yisala. Nope, it's not going to work. You will not be able to bring up, will not be able to allow these figs to be eaten, meaning the figs at the mouth to be eaten, until you have the 100 jugs, like we said before. If you have 100 kadim, means you have 100 jug mouths of chulin dates, and then in one of them we know there's a question that maybe there's truma dates, and we don't know which one it's in. Okay, I have 100 mouthfuls. Can we go ahead and mevatel the litra of truma that is in one of the mouthfuls? But if it's not like that, if I don't have that set up, I have less than 100 of those, right? And you want to go ahead and say, well, the ones on top can combine with the ones on the bottom. Can't do that, Mishna says, because the ones on the bottom are permissible. And therefore, since they're permissible, they can't mix together. Okay, so obviously we have a big problem here that, okay, the Mishnah tells us that here Rebbe Eliezer is lenient and here Rebbe Shua is stringent, but what's the change? What happened? Why here did Rebbe Eliezer become lenient in contrast to what he said before, and why is Rebbe Shua being more stringent? So this is a big discussion, and I'll share with you what explanation for each one. And that is that there's the commentary of Tosfos in Masechtas Zvachim explains the difference according to Rebbe Eliezer. I mean, why did Rebbe Eliezer here say, I can look at them as if they mix together? So the answer is because in this case, if I can look at the top figs coming together with the bottom figs, they will be indistinguishable. They're all the same type of figs, just that I know one's on top, one's on the bottom. But if I would say if I could put them together, but if they would be put together, they'd be put together, you wouldn't be able to distinguish between them. There, Rebbe Eliezer says, I can go ahead and look at it as if they have been mixed together. But in the case of the white and the black figs, for instance, if they all came together, they're still white and black. Rabbi Shua said, since if I would press them together, they would lose they would become indistinguishable. So I could even look at it like that now. And Rebbe Eliezer said, no, you can't go that far. But in our case, where you go ahead and if they do come together, they'll be indistinguishable. So Rebbe Eliezer said, I can do it. Rabbi Shua, on the other hand, what's the difference between Rabbi Shua's case and our case? So Rabbi Shua's case, again, you're starting off with the black and the white ones that are mixed together. They are mixed together. They're touching each other. So the issue is, one's permissible, one's not permissible. How do you deal with that? But they are mixed together. In our case, you've got the jug, you've got the figs at the mouth, and you've got the figs in the bottom. The point is, they're separate. They are separate. Let me just read it to you. Right. Physically, in the case before, the figs are all mixed together. Therefore, Bishua rules that all the figs can combine to nullify the truma figs. In our Mishnah, however, the upper and lower figs remain separate, as are all the other jugs. Physically, they're separate, meaning the case really is by these jugs, the ones in the mouth and the ones in the bottom, are not all like in one, and they're not just stuffed in and the whole thing is full. You've got it at the bottom, you've got it at the top. And therefore, since they are separate, so when they're together, then Rabbi Shua is going to be lenient and say, I can look at them as if to be pressed together, indistinguishable, fine. But you got to start off with the fact that they are together. Here, they are physically separate. Since they're physically separate, Rabbi Shua says we can't look at it as if they are coming together. And therefore, in this case, he is stringent. The halacha follows Rabbi Yeshua in this case. In the case before, the halacha was not like Rabbi Yeshua. In the case before, the halacha was like Rabbi Akiva, that the only time we can talk about like the white figs and the black figs, about combining together, is if I don't know when the fig fell in, was it white or was it black? Then Rabbi Akiva says, in that case where now there's a question on everything, we can go ahead and combine it. Rabbi Shua said you didn't need that. So in that case, we don't pass like Rabbi Yeshua. I don't follow Rabbi Yeshua's opinion. But in our case here, we do follow Rabbi Yeshua's opinion that actually we're going to be stringent, and we're going to say that that unless you have 100 jugs, and therefore 100 jug amounts of chulin figs, then it can be mevatel the litra of figs that we don't know which one it's in. Otherwise, you will not be able to say, look at the top ones as if they're combined with the bottom ones, and together they'll be mevatel the litra of truma figs. Okay, mitzvah kufya test. Mitzvah sleisase shalavay albas benoy. Mitzvah sleisase shalavay albas bitay. Prohibition against being intimate with the daughter of one's son, or with the daughter of his daughter, meaning one's granddaughter. Shnamar, as it says, ervas bas bincha bas bitcha loiskale ervas son. One cannot be intimate with these people. V'chayavim al kol achas sreifa. And again, if there was warnings with witnesses, the punishment for each one involved would be sreifa, burning. V'meizid, if let's say it's done intentionally, below eidim, without witnesses, karis, then they're both liable to a divine severance of their lives. B'shoigek was done unintentionally, chatas, then there's a sin offering. And again, shoigek means they didn't know it was wrong. As we've been saying previously by the other relatives, the sages added other secondary levels. So what is the secondary level of the rabbis that deals with Bas B'nai, the daughter of his son? The answer is Bas B'nai Bovad. It only applies to the daughter of his son alone. Doesn't go further back. Ubas Ben B'nai Bovad, and to the daughter of his son's son alone. Okay, so if we're talking about, again, we talked about one of the prohibitions was Bas B'nai, the daughter of his son. So the rabbis extended it to the daughter of his son and to the daughter of the son of his son. And the rabbinic additions to the daughter of his daughter, okay, the daughter of his daughter is Bas Bitay Bovad, would only be, again, the daughter of his daughter's daughter, and not going further. Ubas Ben Bas Bitay Bovad, and the daughter of the son of his daughter alone. This applies at all times, at all places. Do one more mitzvah. Prohibition against being intimate with one's biological daughter, even if she was born out of wedlock. This prohibition is not explicit in the Torah. This was learned from a kal v'chomer, which means reasoning from the less to the more, an gzeira shava, an equation through identical terms. These are means by which we derive things. The Torah explicitly spoke about the daughter of your wife. The Torah doesn't speak about a daughter that's not from your wife. But that is derived from these means of derivation from the Torah, and through those means we understand and we learn that there is this prohibition also. For committing this act, a woman to be liable with witnesses and warning to be burned. We're talking about intentionally without warning, divine severance of life, and intentionally to be a sin offering. If we're talking about one's daughter from his wife, then there are two transgressions you're liable for. One for the fact that it's your daughter, and the other one is a problem for marrying a woman and her daughter. This applies in all places at all times. This prohibition of marrying a woman and her daughter is, we didn't do that mitzvah yet, but that is where the prohibition goes to when your daughter is, in addition to your daughter being your biological daughter, there's a prohibition against the daughter of your wife, which your biological daughter from your wife is the same thing. And therefore, in the case of biological daughter, you have two transgressions that one would be committing. Have a wonderful Shabbos.